Hi, your homeschool doula here, Doula Amanda, and I brought along my beautiful mother, Jenny, as a veteran homeschool parent, a mother of 8, and she put all of us through homeschool through 8th grade and then transitioned us into public school for high school. So that is the brief introduction, but I'll let her do the rest of her introduction to herself.
Wow. Jenny Cottrell, my husband and I were slowly converted to homeschool. When I first heard of it, I thought, why do public school at the kitchen table? And then I read a book and I went to a conference and I was converted. And a few years later, I brought my husband to a conference and he was converted. And all this before our first child was kindergarten age. And so we started homeschool from the very beginning.
Awesome. So how did you manage teaching little kids at the same time as you taught big kids? Because we are a family of 8 and I have a family of 3 and I'm struggling with my littlest one and teaching my biggest one. So how did you handle it with 8 of us in the house?
One thing I heard from my friends and others was to teach to the oldest child and have the other children with you. So if you're learning history, you do the history story together, and the oldest child might write a report and the youngest child is going to draw a picture. And when the children are even younger, 2 years old, 3 years old type thing, they're at the kitchen table or on the living room floor or the blanket outside in the backyard with their own little activity. They're just hanging around.
How did you handle it when you had a new baby in the house or were sick pregnant or couldn't teach for that day or that month?
That is a very good question, and it was one of the things I learned at my very first homeschool conference. I went to a beginner class, and this mother had quite a few children, and she had had very sick pregnancies on the couch. And she said, the baby is the lesson. Our children learn and watch how we can live life with a baby. We don't have to not have babies because I got this life to live. And so the baby is with us. I nurse my babies, and the babies are on their blankets, and they're with us and playing with us. And when I need to change a diaper, and the children are doing their thing, and I just go change a diaper. And if I was sick, headaches and such things, it's wonderful freedom in homeschool. You can have a book reading day. The whole day is reading books. Or at your educational games, or if you have a friend and you team up and they do the co-op thing that day with your children. When you're in a homeschool, you end up collecting so many homeschool games and books and crafts and all these learning, productive activities. Children, depending on their age, they can be busy while you're on the couch with a headache.
I remember many days where we would come to your room to say, check my math problem. And you would check the math problem and then sign us off, and we'd go and read a book after that or do the next activity, and we would be able to move forward. I hadn't appreciated how hard that must have been until I myself was a mom, and I do not handle being sick very well. So I appreciate how you just lived life with us that way.
And the children learn service. They learn to serve the mother when she's sick. To bring food to her and the cold washcloth, and have your emergency educational movie for those days.
So I was the oldest child that went through our homeschool program, and I went into public school in 8th grade. And then my siblings followed me in 8, 7, 6th grade.
You and your brother Charlie went in 8th grade, and my whole thinking at the time was 9th through 12th grade is going to count for grades and grade point and scholarship, so we got to practice, do 8th grade practice year. And both of you, 4.0, social, just dovetail right in. I thought, we don't need to practice. So the rest of the children, we homeschooled all the way through 8th grade.
Oh, okay.
And then they went in 9th grade. And the question I would get from my peers and even from school teachers is they would say to me, my friends would ask me about the social transition, and some teachers would say, I'm not worried about the education. They're getting A's. But I was wondering about their social transition. Our homeschool is very social. All kinds of co-ops and then children's summer plays and then scouts and choirs and dance and church leadership and 4-H and community things. A
Scout
variety
camps.
of ages of people, not just the one age. Social is very dovetailed into homeschool.
Yeah. So there was no problem in transitioning into high school. How was your parenting different? Or what changed for you as a homeschool mom when your kids started to leave to go to public school?
I sometimes was frustrated when it would take our children 3 or 4 days to get 1 or 2 minutes of time with the teacher to get the question answered.
It's scary asking the teacher.
And sometimes they say, they're too busy, talk to me tomorrow, etc. What changed? What changed was I made myself available when they came home from school and helping with the homework and doing that quick teach myself what's going on with the math so they can help them with the math because they didn't get enough in school. Okay, I'm not bashing high school.
But that brings me to a good point. A lot of people are worried that they cannot homeschool because they do not know what to teach their child or they're not educated enough to teach their child. But even when we were in public school, you still had to learn the material real quick so that you could teach us, even though we had a public school teacher. So how would you address that fear that people might have of not being smart enough to homeschool their kids?
There is so much online. There's the online courses and the curriculums, and there are tutors in the community, and there's like special co-op classes. You can team up for the algebra class. You don't have to be the teacher. But just like in public school, I wasn't the teacher, but parents are a definite important component of a child's education. I've always told my friends, I am fine with wherever your child and my child is educated. The critical foundation is parental involvement.
That's so true. Parents need to be involved if your child is homeschooled and if your child is public schooled. If you were a new homeschool mom just starting out your journey as a homeschool parent, what advice would you give to yourself?
A few things. One is, if at all possible, give yourself some time to explore and prepare mentally, physically, educationally. It can be kind of a scary jump if you're going to decide on Friday and then you start on Monday. That can happen too. I loved it that I had time to go to a homeschool convention and look at all the curriculum and then talk to all of the other mothers and fathers. This is my first book, my first investment that I spent in the homeschool world. And it is the Homeschool Resource, a comprehensive how-to guide for starting. A chapter on everything. And I used it. I used it a lot. And one of my pieces of advice I received was to not spend a lot of money on first hearsay of a curriculum. Take some time before you spend your hundreds of dollars to get feedback and see if it's a good fit for you. And if you do spend a pricey curriculum and it's not working out, you just give yourself the freedom to change to something that does work out for you. Another piece of advice I really liked was you don't have to finish the book. Like with the classics. There are so many classics. If you and your children are reading a classic and all of you are bored, close it up and find a different classic. There's going to be a good moral to the story in every classic. It might not be a good fit. There were seasons, a couple years, where it was heavy boys. We had 4 boys in a row, so heavy boys. And our classics were varied, but I tended to go with Treasure Island and some of the heavy boy stories. And the last few years, it was just our 2 girls. And we had a little bit of mix. We had Where the Red Fern Grows and some of the boy stories. I loved them. And we had some of the girl stories, girl-focused stories of Jane Eyre and The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which probably would have put the boys to sleep, my boys. So fit your classic to your child.
Love that. Thank you. Well, thank you for being awesome, Mom, and imparting your wisdom on all of us.
My delight. Homeschool has been a wonderful experience. I loved it. I just plan on there being difficult days on occasion. It's just life. You just plan on it, to not be surprised, try again the next day. But I loved homeschooling. I loved these years with our children. It brought the children together, their friendships together, and our time together, and then now they're off in the world.
Yeah. And we appreciate being homeschooled so much, and I know me and my siblings talk about how we wouldn't change anything. We loved our homeschool years, and we loved having our mom homeschool us. So thanks for joining me today. If you have any more questions for her, leave it in the comments, and I will pass it on and get them answered. As always, if you like this video, feel free to subscribe and pass it on to someone who you might think would benefit from hearing it from a veteran homeschool mom. And that's it for today. See you next week.